Welcome to Solutions OP Clinical Trials Podcast. My name is Olga and I'm the Managing Director of Solutions OP. We're a small team of experienced professionals working on clinical trials in the United Kingdom. I'll use our podcast to discuss hot topics in clinical trials and provide analysis of the latest trends and challenges in pharma and medical device industries, not just in the UK but globally. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me for this next episode of our podcast. Today I will be talking about placebo controls in surgical trials. It's a very interesting topic for me, not just because I'm a member of an ethics committee, but also because we have come across some studies where they use placebo in surgical studies. And as you can imagine, it's a kind of controversial topic, in terms of if it's ethical or not and how that could be set up and how that works. So today I will be discussing the placebo surgical clinical trials. So there's a growing number of clinical trials, surgical clinical trials that use placebo. This is part of the reason why in 2020 the UK's National Institute of Health Research and Medical Research Council brought together an international team of researchers with experience in placebo surgical clinical trials and patients as well to develop the so-called ASPIRE checklist. So if you're not familiar, ASPIRE is an abbreviation for Applying Surgical Placebo in Randomised Evaluations. There are two publications so far from the ASPIRE group, which I strongly recommend if you have time to review, and if you have interest, of course, in the topic to review. So first we'll talk about why use placebo in surgical clinical trials. Maybe that's the first thing that came to me when I came across such study. I was like, why do they do this? Apparently, one of the aspects is to manage patients' expectations. As you can imagine, everyone is biased, and when a patient is supposed to have a surgical procedure, it's natural for them to expect that surgical procedure will help them and will be beneficial for them. So using placebo could actually kind of neutralize these expectations, make it more realistic, if you want to say, in terms of outcome. So of course, having placebo in surgery is not option for all clinical trials. If you have oncology clinical trial, of course, you cannot use placebo. That's not, I think lots of people will agree on this. The other aspect of using placebo in surgical clinical trials is that interestingly, more than half of the reviewed placebo-controlled surgical clinical trials showed no benefit of the procedure in comparison to placebo. So this means that if you don't have a proper design to show that the procedure that you're recommending, new procedure or new device, is actually beneficial, it will be a very difficult not just for regulatory agencies, but for healthcare specialists and, healthcare system in general to assess if that procedure is actually beneficial or not for the patients and, justify funding for this procedure. So it is a complex, as you can see, it's a very complex issue. So let's talk about what are the main challenges in conducting placebo surgical clinical trials. So there are different types of issues. For example, consent-related issues. It's very important when you write the informed consent patient information sheet that the information is presented in a balanced way. And you manage properly patients' expectations. So patients need to be clear what are the risks and the benefits of the procedure, and not expect, just because they're having this procedure, that means, they have benefit already. And of course, if you're using placebo, it's also important to explain why you're using placebo for patients to understand, and to explain the risks and benefits associated with this, of course, and to be really clear for them what they're consenting for. Then, of course, the next set of issues are recruitment-related issues, as you can imagine. So one part of this is to avoid language which is, could put off patients and even surgeons, of course, to taking part in the clinical trial. For example, saying sham procedure or fake surgery, just seeing the title could really put off people. Say, oh no, I don't feel like I want to go for that. They might not even want to listen anymore once they see the title saying, oh, you're going to have a sham procedure, for example. But another important recruitment issue is to make sure that surgeons also understand the reason behind using placebo and how that will work. And of course, you can imagine that many surgeons will be reluctant and not really keen on having studies where they're using some kind of a placebo procedure. So it is important that this is discussed early on with the surgeons, and also even during the design to be discussed with them and make sure you have the right design for the study. And here we come to the next aspect, which is study design related issues. Of course, the first point that you need to clarify: do you really need placebo? Can you do it in any other way? For example, can you have a natural history arm, or just do nothing arm where you observe the progress of the condition, if that's feasible, of course. If you really need placebo, of course, then the next step is to discuss and minimize the risk to the patients. Of course, this could be, to have a minimal invasive procedure if possible, or shorter stay in the theater. So this is something that definitely you can benefit from discussing with surgeons and see how to best design this placebo part. Another complication in terms of design is the cost of the whole thing. So if you have a placebo procedure, you have to kind of mimic that you're performing a procedure. So patients need to be in the theater for, specific duration of time. Then you need to have, a whole team like you're having a surgery. So you have the whole team there also in the theater. So you need to consider that you need to pay all these people for attending and, just being there, even if they don't necessarily do anything. So that's, I think, an important complication. And we should not also forget that lots of hospitals and surgeries, they have resource issues and they're quite stretched. So it's important to discuss with real-life surgeons how feasible this is for them and how this could, affect their resources, because the last thing you want is when there is a big backlog of surgeries to keep surgeons doing nothing in the theater. Okay, so I think you all agree on this with me. So that's resources and designing the study in a way that it doesn't waste resources. That's a very important part of, I believe, of the study design. So then we come to the next point, which is what are the benefits of having placebo-controlled clinical trials? Now, probably this is something that you're thinking, well, okay, we've already discussed, we try to manage patients' expectations and have more realistic data if the procedure is good or not to be used. But there is also another aspect of this, and this is removing of procedures which are not beneficial to the patients. So it's interestingly in the review for the Aspire group, they've given an example that back in 2002, placebo-controlled trials of knee arthroscopy for osteoarthritis have shown that there is no evidence to support that knee arthroscopy actually is beneficial to be used for diagnostic of osteoarthritis. And yet it took 15 years for the medical community to acknowledge these results and to review their recommendations. It's still recommended, but patients need to meet specific criteria so that they can have this arthroscopy. So it's not like for everyone what it was in the past. And another thing I wanted to mention about Aspire, as I said at the beginning, there are two publications. So there was initial publication in 2020, and then now in 2023, there is a second publication from the Aspire group, which is providing further clarification on the design of the placebo-controlled surgical studies. And also they discuss the superiority of having procedure plus placebo arm plus do nothing arm. So they think that this is a very good way of showing the benefit of the procedure. And to produce data that you actually need to show that the procedure is beneficial. However, they admit that this is associated with additional costs, so may not always be possible to have do nothing as well as an arm. Also, they're talking about the implementation of procedures which have shown to be not beneficial, and again they acknowledge that it's quite a lengthy process to convince the medical community that something doesn't work. However, I think it's a very important information from these trials, especially in terms of public funded healthcare systems, where you try to avoid not just exposing patients to unnecessary procedures, but you also want to avoid additional costs which might not be feasible. And for patients who have private insurance and they pay for themselves, this is a cost for the patient as well that they need to cover. And if it's something that is not helping them, it's really not good to make them pay for something that's not helping them. So as I said, it's an interesting topic, having placebo clinical trials in surgery studies. Definitely, it's something that we need to look into and keep up to date with any future recommendations from the Aspire group. And hopefully we'll see a lot better data that will help not just the health authority, of course, but also help patients and physicians to make a decision what is beneficial for the patients and what is not. And thank you for listening, and hope to have another interesting topic for you for the next podcast.